Well, good morning. It is Friday, May the 3rd, 2024. I am Cole Johnson. Welcome to BS3 Presents The Morning Shift with, what's that name again? Oh, yeah, Cole Johnson. And on tap for today is the following. We have weather issues actually back in my former hometown of Houston. We'll talk about a little bit. We'll talk about college campus etiquette, especially with protests going on and the history of it. Also, do you need to check your anger? I learned that I had to do the same. And to actually close out the week, we're going to have a special cover story where it should warm your heart because it warmed mine when I saw it. But first, it's time to get you started up. All right, and here is what's taking place in the world today. Police in riot gear swept onto UCLA's campus yesterday and tore down makeshift barricades at a pro-Palestinian encampment that had drawn hundreds of protesters and was attacked by counter-terrorists, or I should say counter-protesters, I should say. Man. The pre-dawn crackdown at UCLA marked the latest flashpoint for protests scattered across U.S. colleges amid mounting anger over Israel's war in Gaza and growing impatience on the part of school administrators to allow disruptions, they say, make their campuses unsafe. We'll talk about that story later. A flood watch is in effect for Southeast Texas throughout this afternoon, including the Houston and Austin areas. The National Weather Service said flooding caused by excessive rainfall continues to be possible for the area, where excessive runoff may result in floods of rivers, creeks, streams, and other low-lying flood-prone areas. Another round of heavy rainfall and thunderstorms developed over the area last night, and with the grounds already saturated from previous rainfall, the rain that accumulates today will be slow to drain. A gas tanker traveling on Interstate 95 in Connecticut yesterday morning was involved in a multi-vehicle crash before it exploded, causing a traffic shutdown in both directions on the busy highway. Travelers were advised to avoid the area near the interstate's Norwalk exit. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont said Thursday during a news conference that traffic in the area was still snarled and the northbound and southbound lanes near the exit remained closed. And that was as of yesterday afternoon, according to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. A teenage pizza delivery driver who parked in the wrong delivery of a Middle Tennessee home is recovering from a scare after police said a homeowner shot at him multiple times. The shooting took place Monday night on a residential street in Ashland City. According to a criminal complaint obtained by USA Today, Ashland City Police Department officers responded to a home for a report of a teenage Domino's pizza driver who was unfortunately the recipient of gunfire being shot at him. Arriving officers at the location said the shooting suspect who told him he and his wife saw a truck parked near their driveway on the Ring camera and thought someone was breaking into his truck. Police wrote in their complaint. Ashland City, if you were unaware, it is 20 miles northwest of Nashville. And speaking of Tennessee, if you live there, like I do, you may soon spot one of those noisy, nauseating insects once again, if you haven't already. The volunteer state is one of 17 states around the Southeast and Midwest that will welcome trillions of cicadas in a rare double brood event. Tennessee will see cicadas from brood 19, which emerges every 13 years, and will be found in more states than the 17-year brood 13, although both are expected to emerge in parts of Illinois and Iowa. Weeks after O.J. Simpson's death, his wife Nicole Brown Simpson's murder is set to be explored in a new Lifetime documentary. The network has premiered a trailer for its documentary about the murder of Brown Simpson, which features interviews with more than 50 participants, including members of her family. The life and murder of Nicole Brown Simpson will air in June. Saturday Night Live has announced its final hosts and musical guests for the season. Emmy-winning SNL alum Maya Rudolph will host for her third time next Saturday with Vampire Weekend as a musical guest. In the May 18th season finale, which is the 49th season finale they will put on, Roadhouse star Jay Gyllenhaal will return for his third time as host. Sabrina Carpenter, whose single Espresso is heating up the music charts, will make her SNL musical guest debut on the season finale. Dua Lipa, whose new album Radical Optimism releases today, will play double duty tomorrow night by hosting and performing on SNL. If you're thinking of sending mail and packages to Kansas City's Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce and his house, don't do it. Kelce's house in Leawood, Kansas has been the subject of great attention lately since he started dating pop star Taylor Swift. Kelce said during the New Heights podcast, which is his podcast that he co-hosts along with his older brother Jason, that he had to tell the post office, look, just simply stop sending deliveries. I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to take these packages. I'm not going to open any of them. So if you want to send something to Mr. Kelce, you might be out of luck. In sports, last night, the Knicks ride a 41-point performance from Jalen Brunson as they eliminate the 76ers in Philadelphia. They will take on the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Semifinals as they blew out the Bucks at home, 120-98. Meanwhile, in NHL action, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs will play a Game 7. The Bruins, in particular, will host a Game 7 in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the second consecutive year. After a 2-1 loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto, they will have to avoid losing another series lead and getting eliminated, which is what happened last year with the Panthers pulling out an overtime victory in Boston after the Bruins actually held a third period lead in Game 7. That game will be on Saturday. And for the NBA, there will be 2 Game 6s on tap. You have the Cavs and the Magic in Orlando, and you have the Clippers and the Mavs in Dallas. Will we have Game 7s? That will be interesting. Turning our attention to weather across the U.S., we already talked about Houston. They actually will be rainy and 79 today. It will be partly cloudy and 68 in Seattle, mostly sunny and 70 in Minneapolis, cloudy and 65 in Chicago, rainy and 72 in Detroit, overcast and 53 in Boston. It would be partly cloudy and 63 in New York City, partly cloudy and 72 in Washington, D.C., and mostly sunny and 83 down there at South Beach in Miami. It will be partly cloudy and 81 in Dallas, sunny and 93 in Phoenix, partly cloudy and 65 in San Francisco, and partly cloudy and 71 in Los Angeles. And you're caught up to date, not just with weather, but with starting you up. On tap later. Have you put your anchor in check, or are you putting your anchor in check? That's one thing that we're going to talk about in Lighting the Way. We're going to have inspiration, the likes of which I think we all need in our cover story. But coming up next, we talked about it at the beginning of Start You Up. College campus protests. Is it something that we need to learn from, or have we? You're watching The Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the BS3 Network. We'll be right back right after this.
BS3 Network, changing the way you watch TV.
Join Ryan McCarthy.
I became a Jets fan because Kermit the Frog was my favorite Muppet because he was green, and the Jets wore green. That's how I became a Jets fan.
And Dustin Henry.
ESPN is cashing all in on let's pay a few personalities and we'll just kind of fill in the gaps.
As they walk you through all of the world of sports from their perspective.
The Albany Empire, it's a literal circus.
No credentials required. Where, Ryan, say the tag.
Where you don't need a press pass to talk sports.
Live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on YouTube and where you can find podcasts.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason.
Welcome back to the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the BS3 Network. Glad you're able to join me this morning. Of course, I am Cole Johnson, and we will just simply keep on going as we always do. Now, we've been hearing about college campus encampments and protests, and we'll talk a little further as to why this is happening. And this has been happening for about a month or close to a month. Was there any hope in sight? Just any? Or are we destined for even more violence? And that is the subject we put under a magnifying glass as we do a program spotlight for today. It's not a beautiful thing to deal with war, no matter where it is in the world. I mean, tensions are already high. So in understanding that, tensions across, tension across halfway around the world, it's a little frayed. However, it's the tensions here in the United States that have increased by the day, in part because of seeing Palestinians suffer. In part because we currently have a president who is soft-shoeing his support of Israel. And already on the campaign trail, he's gotten a taste of the pushback. Just think back about a month, maybe a month and a half ago, he was campaigning in Michigan, and people were actually saying that you need to support Palestinian affairs, or if you don't, we will not vote for you this coming November. So he's actually had a taste of it already. We all have heard the saying, violence begets violence. The Violence in the Middle East has been reflected right here on college campuses. I've researched accounts of these on-campus demonstrations taking place in Columbia, the Ivy League school that's in the heart of New York City. I've mentioned earlier that the tension has formed on the campus of UCLA with the last 2 days of arrests and police activity. I know of accounts on campuses in the Midwest where sudden changes in codes of conduct led to immediate arrests. The reason given for these protests center around students calling university faculty to the carpet for not doing business with Israel or to divest from companies who do. Is it possible we can ever get to a ceasefire? Not necessarily halfway across the world, but I'm talking about ceasefire here at home. History shows us that we may be heading down a dangerous path and road once again. Now, you're probably saying to me, once again, Cole? Oh, that we've seen something the likes of which has been like how we've been seeing on these college campuses. Oh, but yes, we have. Once upon a time, there was a university in the Midwest. And it was a normal mid-spring day, pretty much like now. And students were ready for finals and graduation, and they really weren't 100% focused on political matters, at least not until the turn of this particular year. Times were good. I say were, because a certain president decided to bomb an innocent country just out of the blue, at least to the citizens of the country he governed over. He made promises the troops who were overseas at the war at that time would come back home during the most recent election, which was roughly a year and some change beforehand. We learned as the time went on that it just simply wasn't going to happen. Massive bombings took place, and many under the age of 30 protested the government. And these protests weren't just on college campuses, they actually were on the streets, and sometimes it became violent, which it sucks that violence happens to be that way, but that's exactly how it was in this case. Are you seeing the parallel here? The sitting president at the time wanted to squelch the protests and show them that might was right. One day, that might was proven to be not right, but violent, and unfortunately fatal. Students one day decided to protest the war and those particular bombings I just talked about before. The protests were met with open gunfire from the Ohio National Guard. 4 students died, another 9 were wounded. The place, Kent, Ohio. The college, Kent State University. The president, Richard Nixon. The war, the Vietnam conflict. The bombing, it was the U.S. dropping bombs on Cambodia earlier in the year. That year was 1970. And the anniversary of that horrific event is actually tomorrow. The 54th anniversary and the commemoration of the Kent State murders, or Kent State, the Kent State protests gone wrong, that will be celebrated or commemorated this Saturday. The only difference between those protests back in 1970 and the ones that are being exhibited now in 2024 is the fact that the United States isn't fighting a war overseas, or should I say, they haven't sent a massive amount of troops over to a certain area and engaged in warfare. There has been a military presence there. That's why I had to be careful in saying it the way I did. And it has been the case for almost the last 7 months. So what should these campuses do? I mean, should they have students run faculty out of the property? Should faculty amp up police presence and maybe the National Guard to thwart students from setting up encampments on site and protests from dawn to dawn again? No matter your position, even mine, this is something we as a nation must grasp before it spirals out of control again. Seemingly, our nature is to let it spiral. It's just simply turn a blind eye to it and let things just go until they can't go any further. We can't afford to do that. Doing nothing is not the way. It just is. Not listening to dialogue is also not the way. No matter where you slice it, no matter where it happens, anywhere in the world, war is an ugly business. One where nobody wins. And you can say, but Cole, wait a minute. In conflict, you have to have a winner and a loser. Yes, I understand that. But when bodies are on the line, you only have survivors and casualties. And sometimes the side that wins have a lot of casualties of their own. Hopefully, we will learn from history. Hopefully. We should be intelligent and peaceful enough to avoid violent conflict simply because it solves absolutely nothing. Both sides, at least here, should sit down. And when I mean both sides, I mean student representation and faculty representation. Should sit down at a table and listen to one another. Should he decide not feel as though they haven't been properly heard, then more mediation must take place. Anything but to have escalating police presence and violence that may lead to deaths. Killing for the sake of showing muscle doesn't do a thing. It only causes more chaos. It only causes more fear. It only causes more trepidation. It only causes more headache and panic. After all, those who don't learn from history, they are most certainly doomed to repeat it. That's something I hope that we never repeat. But something that you should repeat, and I definitely say you should, if you want to hear more on the U.S. college campus protests of the Israel-Hamas war, then tune in to the Suds or Us podcast. This show is considered one of the cornerstones of this very network. Join Ben Souther Jr. and his wife Irene as they talk about family, life, marriage, and God. That's Suds or Us podcast, live tomorrow and every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. Suds or Us podcast, live tomorrow and every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central on the BS3 Network via Roku TV and the BS3 Network's YouTube channel. Coming up later, inspiration from the inside out shown in hair in the face. Interesting concept, but it can be done. And I've seen it done. And you will too later on. But coming up next, being slow to anger. How good are you in this endeavor? This is the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the BS3 Network. Be right back. This is a BS3 Network presentation.
I want to do a TED Talk, but I don't have anything to talk about yet. I'm getting there.
Life is for the living. We're not here that long.
You can learn anything you want to learn without any money spent.
What do I really enjoy? What do I really want out of life?
I am your host, W-I-Z-E.
Are you in a life-holding pattern? Well, this is for you. Welcome to the Stuck in My Mind podcast. Live every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. Whether it's the men's college game,
the way that this season has been going, yeah, anything is possible.
the women's college game,
And how passionate Angel Reese was at that press conference, they got their mojo now.
the WNBA,
AJ Williams stood at 1 and 2, followed by Brittany Griner, Aaliyah Boston, Jackie Young,
or the NBA.
The Lakers had a 0.8 chance of winning. And then what happened in the fourth quarter? LeBron James by himself outdid the Clippers.
You will get any and all of the information right at your fingertips or your earlobes. Join the Playmaker as he breaks down all things basketball in Shooting Lights Out on the Playmaker's blog, network, YouTube channel, and where you can find podcasts. This is a BS3 Network presentation. Adrian Shawan.
There was a man talking about where the homebodies at, where the women at, and the women was stitching it and was like, we at home.
Scotty Knox.
Another pet peeve of mine, right? First date, if you show up with the ponytail that come out at the top of your head, it will not be a second date.
Butler.
I want people to think independently and freely. She's not. $100 for lunch. I almost got up and walked off.
A show that asks only one question. Is it Wednesday yet? Live every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central.
See everybody talking like they doing what we doing, but these brothers is red and they ain't moving like we moving, and everywhere we go.
Welcome back to the morning shift with Cole Johnson on the BS3 Network. I am Cole Johnson. It is great to have you here, and let's go to the shifter, shall we? My man, Victor Locke, 1/3 of the Snowman in the Morning team. He says, good morning to the EP of all EPs. Cole Johnson, thank you, sir. And I'm glad that you are aboard, and I'm glad you're one of the shifters that's present right now. Okay. This is something that hits a little close to home for me because it's been a battle that I've had to wage for a long time, and that's anger. It's something that we all undergo. It's something that we all must check, and hopefully I have done a good enough job of checking mine. Sometimes I have to say no, but how easy or hard is it for us to check it? That's what we're offering today on Lighting the Way. Now, we live in a society where we can express our anger and it's a comfortable thing. And sometimes it is a comfortable thing to express anger. However, you can't always do it and expect a good result from it or a positive result to come from it. Because sometimes if the anger goes unchecked, you would risk alienation. And really that's what anger does do when it keeps being there for you. And if you don't believe me, just be in that state where you're perturbed and you're outwardly demonstrative. You'll see people who look at you be like, yeah, that guy Cole, I mean, he's all right, but man, everything gets to him. He's not fun to be around. It's not what you would want, and it's not what I want. And so I think you will see here for me that this is a mirror check. I'm looking at myself and calling myself out on this. I had a conversation with my wife last night, and I physically had a rough day. I mean, I was drained. I had a slight migraine, and it was due to heat exhaustion, really. And although I had a good day at work and I had a good broadcast here, it just was a rough day physically. In certain circles, I've had an emotionally rough few weeks. Yeah, I know. I just celebrated a birthday, and it shouldn't be that way. And celebrating the launch of the show, which is basically birthday present to myself, it shouldn't be that thing, right? Well, last night seemed to be a perfect storm of swallowing grenades. And this is a term that my wife has said to me that I do well. And what does she mean by swallowing grenades? Well, whenever you're faced with something and you don't outwardly go, you just take it in and you don't do anything, that anger still is here, and you don't do anything to let it out. It stays in here. And unfortunately, if it just stays in your body, one explosion after another, after another, after another, you're not just going to swallow it and have that explosion within you. You're going to have that explosion come out. And that's what happened with me last night. Now, I didn't snap. I didn't go, I didn't do that. It was more along the lines of being annoyed than anything, like a microaggression, I think. Yet it took my wife, and let me paint the picture for you. My wife is one wise woman. I mean, and I don't just simply mean wise in terms of years on the planet or intelligence from the books, which she does have a lot of intelligence of. She is one of the most emotionally intelligent human beings I've ever known. It took that to bring to my attention an elevated sense of communication. And I really wasn't aware of it. I mean, I was just simply perturbed. I was not aware of it at all. And hopefully we can learn how to become cognizant of these types of aggressions. So today, when I was studying on what I was going to talk about on this particular segment, my heart, my eyes, and my spirit ran into a couple of scriptures, I should say a couple of verses from the book of James. So from the first chapter of James, verses 19 and 20, it goes something along these lines. Quote, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce righteousness that God desires. Close quote. So I've learned that I have to ask these questions. And I had to face it last night after my grenade swallowing once again proved to be a bad thing. Number one, do you know when you become angry? Because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't. So in that conversation, there was something that happened. I'm not going to go into what happened, and we're fine. I addressed it. I thought my wife heard that I addressed it, and that was fine. And about another 20 minutes later, I addressed it again. Everything was fine, and I didn't have this microaggression. So about a few hours later, and again, remember, had a physically taxing day, I get asked again about this particular subject, and I responded a little perturbed and agitated. And I wasn't aware that I responded in such a fashion. And she called me on the carpet on it, as she should have. And so last night before I went to bed, I was like, man, I can't do this. I have to keep my anger in check. Even I'm swallowing grenades, I have to let it go. But guess where you have to let it go? To God, not to another person, and not to yourself. Are you quick to listen? And I go back actually to another conversation that I had, and this is almost 20 years ago. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we still boys to this day. And for those who don't know, I am musically inclined. So I was in a crew, a rap and an R&B crew, where I was part of the production team, and we were having a spirited conversation. And I felt like I wasn't heard. And so I elevated my tone, and my friend, who is extremely mild-mannered, elevated his too. And he knew I wasn't angry at him. I was angry at the situation. And so he addressed it, and he actually said part of the scripture. He said, quote, said, man, you got to be quick to listen and slow to speak. You have one mouth and two ears for a reason. Close quote. And ever since I heard that, it has registered within me ever since. Like, man, one mouth and two ears. Yeah. And I thank him even to this day. So, Torian, if you're watching this, my man, I love you and I thank you, brother. Thank you for being that iron, sharpening the iron in me and pointing that out. And I appreciate you for doing that. It's made me a better man because of it. Are you slow to speak? And this has been the biggest problem for me. Normally, when I am in Houston, the term would be ag. I haven't heard that in a minute. Or amped. If you're on 10, as we've heard recently, normally you want to basically squelch whatever it is just by going, right? Sometimes it's good to put a muzzle on your mouth and not say what comes to your mind right then and there. Because if you do, you might cause damage if there hasn't been any caused yet, and more if there already has been. So you have to be slow to speak. And that's something I have been telling myself for a while. It's like, no, Cole, don't say it now. Say it when you're more composed. Say it when you are more mature in this moment. If it's, or even in certain situations, look, say it if it needs to be expressed. But if it doesn't, don't say anything at all. And if you say whatever you're thinking now, it's going to make matters worse, or it's going to make matters bad. So don't say this now, and check later if you have to say it at all. Which goes into if you are easily offended, or if you weigh others' words and actions and take offense to it. Sometimes it just happens. You just have these moments where it's like you just I think of a song that I heard Willie D of the Ghetto Boys say, "You just looking for a reason." And all of us in anger look for a reason to want to release, right? And normally when someone says something that is offensive to you, or their actions are offensive to you, that is when you normally jump. If you easily are that, dissuade yourself from being that way. This is where you have to understand, you have to say, I am the righteousness of God. I am not this being that explodes. I am not this Hulk-like figure. I am one that produces soft answers. What do I mean by that? There's a scripture that says a soft answer turns away wrath. That's part of it. So you have to be part of the soft answer category, the soft answer crew. Because if you do perform the soft answer, wrath does not take a hold. And if you do the opposite, wrath does, and you don't solve a thing. In fact, you further spiral downward a situation if you do. So, to review, do you know when you become angry? Because it is key to know that. Are you quick to listen, or do you just tune out what someone says to you when you're angry? Are you slow to speak, or do you have a fast mouth? And as many women will tell you, what they've heard from their mothers and grandmothers, fast mouth produces, well, I don't need to go further. And do you easily take offense or weigh others' words and actions? Weigh others' words and actions before you take offense. Because if you take offense, you will be quick to speak. And if you're quick to speak, you will be very slow to listen. And then when all those things happen, you are not noticing that you're angry. You're just in the moment. So you have to be self-aware. Self-awareness with anger, that is the key. And if you can do that, you'll be better off in any conflict or any situation. When we come back, I'll answer some of the shifters as they're coming on board. I appreciate you. And after the break, inspiration the way that it should be on the face and the hair of a woman. This is the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson. We'll be right back right after this.
Eric Butler, a.k.a.
The Intellect, a.k.a. Coloring. I'm the biggest diamond ever found on land, a.k.a. The Atlantic. Cold, deep, and choppy.
LaToya the Therapist, a.k.a.
Them kids' mama, aka Jeff's wife, aka LaToya the Therapist. I am a licensed professional counselor.
Beauty and Brains, clinical and principled, insightful and intelligent. BS3 Network proudly presents Perspective, live every Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Central. Are you looking for something to do on your lunch break? Well, there's a show on the BS3 Network that has only 4 words to say to you.
We ready. We ready. We ready for y'all. We ready. We ready.
The Lunch Break with AJ, powered by JM&E. Live weekdays at noon Central.
Bruce Bernstein.
NBA people are the best people ever. Everything that I've ever wanted to do was always sort of pointed towards the NBA.
Yes. Daniel Jones, I don't listen, I wasn't sold on him in the beginning either.
Ben Sutter,
Dan Quinn. Like, he may not be the greatest head coach, but one thing we do know is that he can coach defenses.
Mirren Fader.
If I did a biography on Hakeem Olajuwon, this is the first true international superstar.
Looking for the up-to-date information in the world of sports? The Real Deal with Courtney Harden. Live every Saturday at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central.
Welcome back to the Morning Shift with Cole Johnson on the B3 Network. Hopefully your morning has gone as well as mine has. And let's go back to the shifters before we continue onward. Victor says, look, man, you honor me every day, brother, and I thank you for that. Well, you honor me, so I just have to return the favor. Thank you, my brother. My man, Ben Sutherland III, the owner, manipulator, the operator of the BS3 Network. How you doing, man? Everything is good with your world? It's good in mine, my man. It's good to see you. Ryan McCarthy, no credentials require fame. He says, good morning, Cole, in the chat. It's Victory Friday in the capital region of New York, which that would be the Albany area, not to be confused with Albany in Georgia. Victor says, it's been my theory that when one becomes quick to anger, they close themselves off to God's blessings and lessons. Drop that mic, my brother. That's true. And I can say it's true in my own case. Ben says we have to find ways to channel our anger and frustrations, and you simply have to think before you speak. See, this is why I love my shifters. They come with the knowledge. They come with the real. I appreciate you, brothers. Thank you for that. And all of that, we all should take heed to. All of it. So I appreciate you. Thank you, guys. And if you have more, come on board. Now, we're going to do something a little different. Now, you saw Lighting the Way actually not end the show as it normally does, because inspiration is a wonderful thing when you get hold of it, and beauty is a wonderful thing to behold as well. But sometimes it's fleeting. Oh, damn it, hold on. I think I heard that. Oh, yeah, it was scripture. But what happens when inspiration and beauty actually collide and intersect? Well, on today's cover story, we go to a hair salon in Trinidad and Tobago, where these hairstylists give more than just hairstyles and makeovers. They actually give their clients a beautiful look into who they are on the inside. Isn't that wonderful, man? Many thanks to Anthony Claxton and his crew over at Krew Kutz. They are again over in Trinidad and Tobago, and they show women how beautiful they are on the inside, with giving them a glowing look on the outside. May we all give gifts like that to women all the time, and we thank the courage of these ladies as well to show us their true beauty, the ones who actually show us that it is not just what we see, but what we feel and what we know. And I see you shifters out there. Chris Bass, my man, I'm glad to see. He says, continue to make it do what it do. Good morning, Matt Sinus. Good morning to you, the maestro of all mayhem. Ryan says, look, this kind of right free music makes you want to get up and dance poorly, but it still makes you want to dance. Good. I'm glad that it gives you that type of joy. And that is all the time I have. Thank you so much for joining me. And I thank you for liking, for sharing, for subscribing, and hitting that notification bell to let us know that you love the programming that we have here, not just with the morning shift, but with all of the BS3 Network programs. I am Cole Johnson, here to say, imparting as I always do. If you lack commitment, you won't start. If you lack consistency, you will not finish. And if you lack love, you most certainly will not conquer. Until we do this again in 71 hours, have a great weekend, everybody. Be blessed, and I'll see you Monday.